Welcome back to Cox Connections, exclusively on Cox 9. I'm Jeff Merritt. Roanoke Valley Reads is a community-wide reading project bringing citizens of the Roanoke Valley together through the reading of a common book. This is the 5th project by the nonprofit all-volunteer group. This year's book is Beth Macy's Factory Man. Meg Carter with Roanoke Valley Reads is here to tell us about it. Meg, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start off with a little bit of baseline information about what is Roanoke Valley Reads?
Roanoke Valley Reads, most simply put, is the Valley's largest book club. We just want to encourage everyone in the community to pick up the book, the selected book, every year, read it, and join the conversation.
And this is leisurely reading, right? I mean, the intent is not, work-related or anything like this. It's reading for fun. It is reading for fun, and that is one of our core mission principles, is we wanted to encourage people to read more. We realize that there are a myriad of ways that you can spend your free time, but we feel like sometimes picking up a book can be a very satisfying experience, and whether that book is in paper or whether that book is on your Kindle, either way, get that story in your head and share it with someone else. Now, certainly you want folks to read, but there's some value in having everybody read the same book. I mean, it spurs conversation and...
Yes, it does. Communitywide Reads have been around for about 20 years, and as you mentioned, this is our 5th project. The idea was sprouted in 2009 by Ann McCallum and Lucy Lee, and we are ever grateful to them for this legacy. At the time, it was the Big Read, which is a National Endowment for the Arts endeavor, and that was a wonderful experience that year. By the time 2010, when the project rolled out, it was we read A Lesson Before Dying by Ernest Gaines. What we discovered that year, although we had a wonderful participation in 37 events, which nearly killed all of us, the public really wanted to hear from the author. And at that time, Ernest Gaines was not able to travel and join us here. So the National Endowment for the Arts model, the Big Read, did limit you to a list that they dictated. So we switched to the American Library Association model, which really is exactly the same thing, except you can choose your own book. Okay. So at that point, we formed a large volunteer committee as a book selection committee, and we focused mainly on books that have authors who are willing to come to Roanoke and share their stories with our audience.
Well, this year's book, Beth Macy's Factory Man, has a certain appeal. Tell us a little bit about why you chose Factory Man.
This is a major project. There are about 35 people. They read a variety of books. They call the selection down, and they were almost to a selection when Beth Macy's book was published about a year ago. And one of our fabulous volunteer coordinators, Libba Wolf, read the book. I think she read the entire thing in one night, the night that it came out, and she said, "Stop the presses. This is a fabulous book. We need to consider this." And I'll back up by telling you that one of our requirements with our books is that they're available in paperback, because one thing about our project that I'm most proud is we want it to be barrier-free. We want all of our events to be free. We want the books to be available in the library, and we don't want let's say a hardback price to give anyone a reason not to read the book. So we selected it knowing that by this time in the year it would be in paperback and available to our readers.
We talked about the conversation that comes from this reading, and that's part of the intent here, right?
Absolutely. Everyone has a different opinion. Whether you intend to or not, when you read something or see something or talk about something, you overlay the influences of your life. And I think that just enriches any story or any book. We have had nonfiction and fiction books, and the conversations have been equally as colorful. It's so interesting to take a book. None of us can say how that book will resonate with you, but you can tell us how it did, and we can get that conversation going, and maybe you have seen something in there that I didn't see, or maybe your personal experience really colored that influence. So it's been a very interesting process over the 5 years.
You talked about wanting to have the author and the folks willing to visit the area and to participate. Obviously, the local aspects of this are big. And so not only the author, but also the subject, John Bassett, both are going to participate in some of your events.
Absolutely, yes. We're thrilled that Beth Macy and John Bassett III will be speaking together. They are quite a duo, and they have some interesting stories to tell about how this book touched other people. And some of those stories are not all that pleasant, and some of them are wonderful, because when you write a book like this that does sort of examine somebody who was really questioning the status quo, you're bound to make some hairs prickle on people's necks.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So you get both sides of the equation, but the dialogue's the important thing.
Absolutely.
And so it's a win-win. You're getting folks to read, in their leisure on a subject that's worth conversation, and so it's really a win-win all the way around.
Yeah, we think so. We call it the grocery store line effect. You know, I've been in the grocery store line many times over these 5 years and seen the Roanoke Valley Reads book peeking out of someone's purse, and that's very gratifying because I see people talking about it who, you know, it's another conversation starter. It's another way to relate with the wonderful people in our community.
Gotcha. Now, earlier you said 5 years in on this, and you've learned along the way. Tell us a little bit about that experience over the 5 years. You've done these different books, and obviously it's grown and developed, and you probably have a number of interesting stories that have come from that.
We do. You know, as I said, the book has always driven the events. One of my favorite stories is when we read Outcasts United by Warren St. John, and that is about a soccer coach who was a Jordanian heiress who was disowned by her family, and she came to the United States with virtually nothing, having left all of her wealth behind. She was highly educated, but her passion was soccer. And when she was living in the outskirts of Atlanta, found out that there was quite a refugee population, and the only thing these kids had in common, they didn't have language in common, they didn't have a lot in common except soccer. So she started a soccer team for these people, and it just turned into this wonderful story. Well, as luck would have it, Roanoke is also a refugee resettlement area, so we had a lot of commonalities with that particular book. And as we delved into it, we realized that the stories of these refugees were just heartbreaking and passionate and influential. And as it turned out, that particular year, there's a rapper named Jal who was a child African soldier, had been in a refugee program, and turned his life around, became a rapper for peace. And he was at Ferrum. I got a phone call from a professor at Ferrum, Dr. Susan Mead, who said, "I can't believe you're reading that book. There's so many connections here with the African story, and Jal's going to be in town. Would you like him to come to one of your events?"
Right.
So never in our wildest dreams did we think that would happen, but that was just another wonderful element. Serendipity has been a great part of this project, and we love that.
Well, I want to thank you so much for everything that you're doing here. I think it's wonderful for the Roanoke Valley. You know, you're engaging the community in a great way. And I think that just being able to showcase certainly some of our local talent like you have, like your just last example, and with Beth and everybody else, I think it's just fantastic.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. To learn more about Roanoke Valley Reads, visit RoanokeValleyReads.com. More Cox Connections coming up. Stay tuned.